programming myself to this vision of who I am becoming, so that I can be that today on the road to becoming that.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. Nothing you hear on this show is legal or investment advice, nor is it an offer to buy or sell securities. Always consult your own legal and financial professionals before making decisions. Welcome back to another Capital Flow podcast. I'm your host, Dallon Schultz. If you are looking to raise $100,000 or more for your next investment, this is the show for you. I am super excited for our guest today. This gentleman here probably needs no introduction. But Russell Gray, he's an evangelist for Main Street Capitalism, and he's been sharing business and investing ideas with audiences on radio, TV, podcasts, and conferences for over 25 years. And he's an avid student of economics related to history. And Russ believes we're in the midst of a revolution of decentralization, which is opening a floodgate of opportunities for Main Street entrepreneurs and investors. And in fact, we started recording we didn't record before the show. We started asking each other some questions. I was like, man, we should have started recording. So you guys are in for a super, super, super big treat. He's a pioneer in training people how to raise private capital and has helped launch the careers of many Main Street syndicators. Russ, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited. A very nice studio you've got here. This is awesome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, this is Capital Flow Studio, and it's been an awesome opportunity to connect with incredible people like yourself. To our listeners, I got to share something personal here. So because of Russ and the show that you guys hosted, the Real Estate Guys Radio, that is the podcast that got me into real estate and got me to where I am today. So it is an honor to have you here with us and to see this come full circle. So from the bottom of my heart, sincerely, I appreciate it. So while Russ, share with our listeners a little bit. I mean, we had a great intro here, but share with our listeners a little bit about your primary focus of where you're at right now.
Well, as I said, I consider myself to be an evangelist for Main Street Capitalism, and I think the timing really couldn't be better. I've been a Main Street capitalist all my life. I didn't have the patience. I lasted 10 months in what you'd call corporate America. I got myself a day job, hated it, punching a clock, carrying my lunch bucket, looking at the guys that were 20, 30, 40 years older than me, looking at that long green line to retirement. I'm like, oh man, this dog don't hunt. I don't want to do this. And so I was very fortunate that I ended up in a mentorship program with my uncle, who was an outside salesman in Southern California. And so I learned business by doing business, not by hearing about it, not by reading about it, not by studying history or theory or talking to somebody who used to do it, by just getting in the street and doing it. And so by the time I was 19, I'd already started a business, owned my first property, and had a lot of ups and downs since then. But I've seen a lot of things that have happened. And one of the big things that I saw happen coming out of the GFC, and I'll spare the horrible things that happened to me going through that. But I saw the Jobs Act come out in 2012, and our mutual friend Mauricio Raoul pointed that out to me, and I thought, wow, I looked at that, and I thought, I can't believe they let that go through. And I wrote a report, New Law Breaks Wall Street Monopoly, and my hypothesis was that now that Main Street capital raisers could actually compete for accredited investors' attention by publicly advertising as Reg C, I said, this is going to open up the floodgates. And so we made a move to be on the front end of that. We created a mentoring program, first with a coaching program, High Touch, raised, two guys that came through that program have raised over $1 billion in equity, not assets under management, equity. I got another guy that's raised over $300 million, had a couple of guys up in that range, and lots of folks, $5, 10, 20, $30 million. And so then that became super exciting to me. But then in this last round, as I looked what happened in Trump 1.0 and kind of the rise of the MAGA movement in Trump 1.0 and the things that he attempted to do, and then the contrast of what happened in the economy based on the things that the Biden administration did. And I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying policy matters.
Yeah.
And so when they made the policy that opened up the floodgates of private capital, I saw an opportunity, right? So you have to pay attention to policy. A lot of times you don't like to talk about politics, but this isn't about proclivities. It's not like, oh, this is how I wish it was. It doesn't matter what you wish. They're not asking you except for your vote, right?
Right.
Maybe that counts. But really what you have to do is you have to just read and react to what they're doing. And the further down or up the food chain you can see what's happening, you get an idea what's coming. And so when I began to see the popularity of Donald Trump in the election cycle, I thought, you know what? If this guy wins, and if he wins big, in other words, he carries the House and he carries the Senate, he's going to feel like he's got a bit of a mandate. He's got 4 years to plot his course. He's not a rookie. He knows his way around. This isn't his first rodeo. He's going to be super aggressive. And so I think that if he's successful, it is going to open up a lot of floodgates for what I call Main Street capitalism. And I can explain the thesis behind that. I'm going to speak on that at Best. We're going to both be at Best Ever Conference next week. So I'm going to speak on that there. And if he fails, he's going to fail spectacularly. And I think you have to be prepared, for both. If it's status quo, it's great. We're all just going to plod along like we always have. But this is unlike any other political administration. He's moving at a pace, doing things unheard of. Some people hate it, and I get it, right? There are people that depend on government subsidies, and they think that that's the most secure job you can have. It's turned out to be the most insecure job you can have. So that's what happens when things change. They change very fast. And so your ability to read and react is really what it comes down to. And that's why we belong to these mastermind groups, why we create mentoring programs, online, offline, why I'm launching the show Main Street Capitalist, to really talk about what's happening in Main Street capitalism and how to get in on that action.
So let's go into that a little bit. Main Street capitalism. Invite us into your world.
What's that?
Invite us into your world in regards to the Main Street capitalist.
Yeah, so capitalism, I had a talk with some friends of mine. G. Edward Griffin wrote the book Creature from Jekyll Island. And he told me, he goes, Russ, that you might want to stay away from the word capitalist. And I thought, I want to take the word back. Because what I've realized that this rise of Trump, the rise of Bitcoin, the rise of gold, if you've been paying attention, the rise of BRICS and their move to try to de-dollarize, something they started working on in 2010. I wrote another report on that in 2013 called Real Asset Investing, because they said if they're successful, it's going to really diminish the dollar, and that means you're going to want to be in real assets, not paper assets. And so, again, when you understand the way the mechanics work, but the word capitalist has come to really represent monopolies. And what we're going through is a big worldwide mega macro trend of decentralization. Bitcoin is decentralizing money. Gold is decentralizing away from the dollar. And nations are stocking up on gold everywhere so they can decentralize from the dollar as the world's reserve currency. The MAGA movement is decentralizing, pushing government back down to where it was more like constitutionally. No, let the states decide. And inside the states, no, let the counties and the local. The government was designed by our founders to be close to the people. And so the idea is, hey, we're going to lower the tax burden. We're going to lower the regulation burden. We're going to make it easier to start a business. We're going to incentivize people to bring manufacturing and real industry, productive industry, not financialized industry, back to the United States. And if that happens, if they're successful in doing that, those primary businesses will create secondary and tertiary business opportunities. And so that's what I call Main Street capitalism. If you are out there working, as Joe Main Street, and you live below your means and pay your taxes and save, and then you invest your money and give it to Wall Street. You got Wall Street, big banks, big government, big tech, globalists. They're all in bed together, and they create moats around their monopolies, right? You'd think that business people, capitalists, would be small government. They would be for the things that make entrepreneurism easier, but they're not. They're actually for the things that make it harder, because that prevents the little guy from growing and actually competing with the big guy. And it used to be if you wanted to get a hotel, you booked with a hotel chain. Now you can book with, Airbnb. You don't even have to be in a big box hotel. If you wanted to get a ride, you'd have to order a taxi. Centralized. Now it's decentralized. Everything is decentralized because of technology. Media, look at us right here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Two schmoes with microphones. Right?
Who trusted us to sit in front of two microphones?
Well, so they've said Main Street has become the media now. Well, Main Street is going to become the economy again. It's not going to be watching the Mag 7. It's not going to be taking your savings, giving it to Wall Street, and having them give that to corporate leaders who take the jobs and open factories offshore. Right? That needs to stop if we truly want to make America great again. So they can make it easier for you to start a business, but you still got to do it. And that's where it really comes down to what you do and what we do, which is raising capital. Because when you want to go acquire a business, 40+% of the small businesses out there right now are owned by baby boomers. And these baby boomers are creating opportunities in industries like healthcare, but they're also creating opportunities for those businesses to be taken over by young, energetic people with new ideas, leveraging technology and personal brands and being able to really increase the marketing and the efficiencies. And so there's a lot of meat on that bone. And I wanted to be in a situation where I could show people, hey, let's raise capital. Let's either start a business, buy a business, and scale a business. So there's going to be opportunities there. Those businesses, a lot of them are going to need to operate in real estate. There's going to be opportunities there. Sleepy markets that nobody's paying attention to, that except for some CEO who's thinking, I might open a factory there. So if you can get up to the Chamber of Commerce and get as high up the food chain as you can, read the corporate reports and figure out what companies are repatriating and where are they going to go, and you get there in front of them and you buy land and you start get ready for that to come. And so there's just a ton of opportunity right now in Main Street capitalism. I think our school system has trained people how to be worker bees, cogs in a machine. The school system cranks out people who need jobs. They're job seekers. We need educational programs that create job creators. And that's why I coach entrepreneurs. That's why I coach raising capital. I coach selling, because you have to know how to sell if you want to raise capital, recruit, lead a team. And so those are the core skill sets of a Main Street capitalism, and it's decentralized. It's taking Main Street back from the monopolies.
And giving the power to the people.
Power to the people, but not socialism, not communism.
Right.
Because see, those movements, they play on the economic naivete of Main Street, and they appeal to their frustration and say, oh no, let's take power away from big business and give it to big government. But at the end of the day, it's still big and little. This is not what this is about. All the big people are on one team, and Main Street needs to be on its own team. And I think that's what's happening globally right now and on steroids in the United States, because we still have the Constitution and we still have the most freedom. Our freedom's been infringed a lot, but compared to other places in the world, we still have the most. We saw that in COVID, right? So we have the opportunity to use our freedom to engage in commerce and build real wealth. And then we want to use that wealth to protect the very freedoms that made it possible to earn and to enjoy. Because if we fail to do that, we may wake up in 20 years when these kids that are going up in school being taught that they are owed a living and everything, and it's not their fault, they believe that. They've been taught that on purpose because it puts power into the hands of big government.
Yep.
And so we want to teach them how to be entrepreneurs. I created the Raising Capitalist Foundation to actually attack that problem.
Absolutely love that. And let's talk a little bit about this need for capital. There's going to be a lot of opportunities coming up, not just in real estate, but in businesses. We were talking a lot about these baby boomers whose businesses they're getting to that point where they're looking to exit, they're looking to get out. But in order to be able to effectively raise capital or even start or be your own business, start a business, I personally had to go through a transformation. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. Now, my journey, I was in the medical field. I had my bachelor's in nursing. I was working in the emergency room. And then when I decided to exit and leave to be full-time real estate, I got blindsided by what was actually required of me to become a business owner. So share with our listeners some of your experience and what needs to happen to make that transformation, A, maybe a little less scary, and B, to make it successful.
Yeah. So a couple of things. It all starts in what you think and believe. What you think and believe affects what you do, and what you do affects the results you produce. You want to change your results, you got to change what you do. But knowledge isn't enough, right? There's a lot of people that want to change their body, and it's not, knowledge is not the problem. It's their relationship to food and exercise, right? They like food and they don't like exercise. Right, and so they get their what do you call it, dopamine. They get their hits from eating, and then they don't enjoy the exercise. Right, you have to flip it. You have to learn to like the things that are good for you. And so with entrepreneurism, you have to begin to think like an entrepreneur, and I call it think like a builder. People understand that a little bit more, and it's not just the responsibility. The first level up is learning to be responsible for results, right? When you go straight commission, when you open up a business and you are responsible, that bottom line, you either eat or you starve. There's no guarantee, right? You learn a degree of personal responsibility that most people don't have when they're in a curated environment. So that Jocko Willink, extreme responsibility, extreme ownership, that beginning to take on the more freedom, the more wealth you want, the more responsibility you have to take. So that's kind of number one. And then the second thing there is being in an environment where the culture gets reinforced. And so one of the hardest things is if you're not in an environment where you're around people who are entrepreneurial, people who are driven, people who have vision, people who see the possibilities in spite of the problems. They don't ignore the problems. They're aware of them, but they always see the flip side. It's that attitude that, yeah, I see the problem. I hear what everybody's talking about, but the flip side of it's a big opportunity.
Yep.
Right? When you don't think that way, you're not going to move. When you hope and don't believe, you're not going to move. When there aren't people around you that are fueling that beginning ember of hope and opportunity, you're not going to move. And so the way you learned whatever attitudes, habits, and beliefs you have today was largely the product of the people you hung around with and the ideas you put in your head. So the very first thing you got to do is you got to put new ideas in your head, and you got to get around new people if you're not in the right crowd.
That's one of the first things I had to learn early on was really rebrand myself. I had to rebrand myself, but then get around people that were already doing what I wanted to be doing. And what I found that did for me was it empowered me. I'd see those people. I'm like, okay, if they can do it, if Russ can do it, if Paul can do it, why can't I? And then when I started surrounding myself with these people, what I found was actually the opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting these people to hold their secrets close to them. I was expecting these people to judge me for not knowing what the hell I was doing. It was the complete opposite. These people leaned into me. And now that we're at where we are, we find ourselves naturally wanting to reach down and help the next person up. And we're all in this together. So your emphasis on getting around like-minded people, 100%, that has to happen. And you've spent years providing opportunities to bring these people together through mentorships, through coaching programs, through events. So what are some things that you have coming up in the next few months or this year that if people are looking to make that change, if they are looking to get around more like-minded people, how can they get more involved?
Yeah, so I've been probably overly ambitious. You know, the old adage, the man that chases two rabbits doesn't catch any. I'm chasing about 5. And, I want to start at the top and work my way up. And, having left the real estate guys a year ago and really begin to going through that transformation process myself, thinking about who am I, what do I do, who do I do it for, why do I do it, what's in it for them, what's in it for me, what's in it for the world, right? And then designing all of that. But what it really came down to me is number one, creating content. So the shows are important. I appear on a lot of shows as I am here. I do Mike Maloney's show, Kiyosaki show, McElroy's show. As many people will have me, I do my best to make myself available because I want to get the ideas out there. So that's number one. Then number 2 is communities, giving people a chance to get into communities. So I'm involved in a variety of different mastermind groups and mentoring programs. So I've got an investor mentoring program where it's just $47 a month, super cheap. And it's just once a month I get on a call, and just for 2 hours, I talk about what's going on in the economy, what it means to Main Street, and I field questions. And that every episode goes into a private library for the club. I don't charge $47 because I'm getting rich on $47. I want people to show up. right? So that's an entry-level commitment for somebody to invest in themselves. One of the principles of entrepreneurism is you have to be able to trust yourself to get a return on an investment. You make a $47 bet that you're going to get at least one good idea that you will act on. And I went back and I talked about how in 2019, I saw Basel III make gold a tier 1 asset. And probably half the people, maybe more, who just heard that go, what?
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
What does that mean? Well, what that meant is that when banks are organizing their capital to satisfy the regulators, and this isn't just domestically, this is worldwide, that they're able to use gold as equal to cash. So it elevated the status of gold. It also elevated the demand for gold. On April 1st, 2019, when that happened, gold was $1,234 an ounce. Today, it's $2,900, right? So just in 5-6 years, almost 6 years, it doubled. And so you would see that coming if you understood the way the system works. So that's the kind of thing I do on the Investor Mentoring Club. The next level up is the Syndication Mentoring Club, or the Syndication Club. And people can join that, and that one is a little bit more expensive because you got to be serious. So it's $5,000 initiation fee and then $497 a month, and it's a lot more calls, a lot more touches, and it's really just coaching people. And it includes Investor Mentoring Club and another thing I do called Sales Pro Mentoring. And so one of the things that you have to be able to do is when you get into a conversation with somebody, you have to know how to work through a structured conversation that is designed to uncover needs, wants, desires, goals, and objectives, raise awareness so both parties understand what is desired and why. And then when you go to present your solution, what I say, talking to the brain, the heart already wants it. So my premise is in selling, you sell the heart first, and then you just convince the brain to do what the heart already decided it wants to do. You can't do that by talking. You have to draw the other person out. So it's a little bit of an art form. So I do a 2-day workshop called How to Win Funds and Influence People. And I actually sit you down, I teach you the techniques, and then you role play. You do role play for 2 days, just back and forth with people. It's the same thing IBM put me through many, many years ago. It was absolutely career changing. And then the Sales Pro Mentoring Club is just 2 one-hour calls a month where I just do group coaching, live interactive without a net. You have a live sales interaction, you bring it to me, and we just dissect it. How'd it go? And you tell me. And you say, well, what do you think you could do better? You tell me. And I say, okay, let's role play. You be the client, I'll be the sales guy. Based on what you just told me, let's go. And then we go through it. And all of those sessions get recorded and go into the library. So it's designed to teach people kind of the macroeconomics of being able to understand where opportunity is going to be in both business and in investing. And then the sales skills to be able to go actually have successful negotiations, successful database opening or wallet opening conversations, coaching along the way so you can get around people to hone your craft. And then the syndication program is because the danger in syndication is that when you're out there and you're actually responsible for someone else's money, you have to have a lifeline. You have to have someplace you can go fast where you can get an answer. And the reason we don't do this like on YouTube is because you have to be able to have some confidential conversations, right? Everybody's under non-disclosure, non-circumvention, non-solicitation. We can edit things out of the recordings if they're too personal. But, in syndication, you deal with real problems, compliance issues, whatever. So you have to go someplace that's real, not hype, not, hey, I'm going to get you all pumped up and go out, and if you crash and burn, sucks to be you. I mean, that happens. We've had some people that it happens. I'm sorry. Sometimes you tell people, hey, hire somebody to do due diligence, and they don't do it. You're like, I can't do it for you.
Yeah.
You got to do it. But anyway, so that's what all those programs, they all fit together in this concept of Main Street capitalism and being an evangelist and empowering people in Main Street capitalism. So those are the things I'm into.
That's excellent. And one of the things you talked about earlier, you said when you were a kid, a teenager, you said you learned business by doing business. And one of the things I picked up on as you were talking about your programs here, especially the sales program, you're getting people in role playing those sales right away. So I would say the same thing. You can't do sales or the best way you do sales is by doing sales.
You have to do it. Yeah, well, I got taught. I was very fortunate. The very first training program I ever took was a bootlegged copy of How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, who's now a good friend of mine. But he was just this amazing, guru back in the 1980s when I first heard it. I must have listened to that cassette tape program 1,000 times driving around.
You said cassette tape?
Yeah,
explain for some of our listeners what a cassette tape
it's
is,
a little
Russ.
plastic box. It's got this thin, it looks like Scotch tape, but it's brown, and it goes around in a circle. And if you put it in the right device, it'll actually make noise, kind of the way your devices do. So I'm old enough that every form of music up until this last iteration of it actually had motion involved. There was something was moving, right? Nothing today. But anyway, so I did that, and then that got me to realize, hey, this is not an innate personality type. I was shy, I was introverted, I was socially awkward. And people look at me today because I've been on camera, TV, stage so many times, like, oh, you're extrovert. I'm not. I'm definitely not. But you learn how to kind of go into a mode when you're anxious to communicate to somebody, and you're not self-conscious because I'm more interested in what I'm delivering than what I'm getting. And so I got a chance to go to a 1-week boot camp with IBM, and that's where I learned the power of role play. And what we would do in that camp is they would spend the morning and they would teach you a technique. And then they would videotape you that afternoon working with your partners. It was a very small group. There was only about 8 of us in the class. It was 40 hours.
Wow. Hey, Dallon here. We'll get right back to the show in less than 60 seconds, but I wanted to take a moment to share something that could be costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost capital: your email deliverability. If your open rates aren't at least between 40 and 60%, I'm going to guess you don't have a content problem. You most likely have a deliverability problem. That means your emails are landing in spam, meaning potential investors are not being nurtured effectively, or even worse, never even having a chance to see your investment offering. But it's okay. We're going to help you fix that. My team put together a free guide with 10 best practices to ensure you're avoiding spam and actually hitting your leads' inbox. Your email reputation is like a credit score. It can take years to build and moments to ruin it. So don't make the same mistakes we did. The resource is short, tactical, and will get your emails back where they belong, the inbox. So go ahead, click on the link in the description or show notes below to access the checklist so you can avoid capital slipping through your fingers because of a simple fix. Click the link below, and now let's get back to the show.
And then the next morning you would come in and they would break down your tape, just like being a pro athlete.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was brutal, brutal. But, by the time you went through all that, when I got back in the real world and nobody knew what I was supposed to be doing, I knew there was no critique on the back end. My confidence level was way up. But the most important thing I learned out of all that, besides the fact that you do have to practice and role play, it's a state of mind. It's a reaction. I like to shoot guns, firearms training's the same way. You go very slow, you do the technique, and then they go real fast, and you try and get muscle memory. Well, it's the same thing in your speech patterns and responding to different stimuli. What do you say if somebody says, "Oh, it costs too much," right? You got to be ready to know how you're going to respond. But the other thing is that self-critique, because we would critique the other students, and it honed our ability to look at a situation, and even critiquing our own film, we could begin to break it down. So what I would do is I would go in and I would have a sales exchange, and I would budget like half an hour on the back end between my appointments to sit down, and I would just take out a journal and I would write down what happened. What I said, what I should have said, what I could have said, if I had a chance to do it again, what I would do. And then I did that. And I did that for probably a couple years. Wow. And it really reinforced to me. Now, some people don't want to do the work, right? Because you feel like an idiot. You just had a bad experience, like, oh, I just want to brush that under the rug and pretend it never happened. But you can't learn that way.
I like that strategy that you take there. And there might be some listening to this that their preferred method is just get on the next sales call and just fill their day up with calls and put in the reps for it. But you said you would block out an entire 30 minutes to essentially debrief on that call. Is there a preferred method that you think works better than the other? If so, why?
Well, I'll tell you, I journal. I'm a hardcore journaler, like hardcore. I don't know what time it is right now, but I got up at 2:00 this morning.
Wow.
I was in my chair by 2:15, and I journaled for 5 hours. So I'm hardcore. Usually it's only about an hour and a half, but I had a lot on my mind today. So I like writing by hand for a couple of reasons. One is because if you've ever seen me type or text, it's humiliating. It's so bad.
Is it that bad?
It's so bad.
Yeah.
You do a screen share with me and you're watching me try to type. It's like backspace.
Is he one of these people?
I destroy backspace buttons. So but the other thing, the discipline of engaging mind to hand, and then having to think in complete sentences. You can't see how disjointed your thinking is on a word processor, on a computer. Because when you get done, it looks beautiful. You don't see all the backspaces and the deletes and the cuts, right? But when you write on a piece of paper, you can tell right away, can I think in complete thoughts? Can I complete a sentence? Can I get it down in proper syntax? Can I put down an argument in proper order? Or do I have this circled and arrows up here and this scratched out and rewrite? I can tell where my level of thinking and clarity is when I just look at what I've written.
Wow.
And so it slows your mind down. And there's an old saying, and it's been attributed to Carl Lewis, the sprinter, but he was actually quoting a martial art instructor, I think in the Marines. And it's that slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I learned that in firearms training. They would take us through, draw, you'd put your hand on your chest and you position your hand over your holster, then you drive down on the gun, then you bring it up, and they'd count you through, and you'd very slow until you had sight alignment and your trigger ready to go. Right. And then they put you on the timer, and you got to do that whole thing like in 1.5 seconds and get 2 shots off. But you can't do it fast until you learn to do it slow. I talk pretty fast, but that's because I spend a lot of time thinking very slowly. And then when it's time to go on mic or open up my mouth, I think in complete sentences. I can see where I'm going. So it's a wonderful discipline. I'm a huge fan of it, and it calms you down too.
And I'd imagine most of the stuff that you're speaking about is stuff you've already journaled about. You've already written it, so it's not the first time that you're delivering that message.
Yeah.
And so that enables you to deliver it more eloquently.
Yeah. And then what I'll do is I'll take the things I think, okay, I've got some talking points here. I think I like it. Then I like to go to a trade show where I'm going to interact with a lot of people. If I can stand in a booth and I can have 30, 40 conversations a day, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, boy, by the time I get to that, whatever it is, the 200th conversation, it's way better than the first one. But the first one was based on the stuff that I had written. So those two things go hand in hand, because you hear all the time about you got to have your elevator pitch, right? What they're really saying is you have to be able to communicate with clarity, which is true, which is an intellectual discussion, but you also have to be able to communicate with passion, because passion is what people will remember. They won't remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel.
100%. And you mentioned earlier, you consider yourself an introvert. To everybody else, you come across as an extrovert. I mean, you do all these podcasts, these shows, you speak at events. And I was just explaining in the start of our show that I feel like I'm an extroverted or introverted extrovert, or an extroverted introvert, where I can find those things I'm passionate about and tap into that energy. And so what you share there, I think, is very, very important, especially when it comes into your sales conversations, especially when it comes into connecting with potential capital. If you're not passionate about what you're raising capital for or what you're doing, you're going to find it very, very difficult to raise the capital that you need. And in regards to that, you've done a lot of trainings. You've taken a lot of people through sales trainings, teach them how to raise capital. What would you say is probably the number one thing that prevents people from raising more capital?
They think what's in it for them, right? It's never, ever, I do this whole thing. It's never, ever, 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 never, ever, never, ever, 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 never, ever, never, ever, 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 never, ever, ever about you. Ever, ever, never, ever. And the reason I do that is because people remember it, right? When you sit down, the passion that you have isn't for your deal. The passion that you have isn't for your industry. The passion that you have is what you are going to do for the human being sitting across from you. One of the challenges we have today in a ClickFunnels world is everybody is fixated on their avatar, and they get really good at talking to their avatar. So you've got this world of people out there, and then you have a group of people that have some things in common that are likely to want your product or service called your avatar. But when you sit down one-on-one with somebody, it's a human being. They're as unique as their DNA, their retina scan, or their fingerprint. And so your mission is to uncover not just what they need, but why they need it, why they want it. And not just the first why. Oh, I want to make more money. Okay, that's great. This deal will help you make more money. Tell me, why do you want to make more money? What would you do? How would your life change if I had more money? Well, if I had more money, I'd have more free time. Okay, and what would you do with your free time? Third why. Well, I would spend time with my kids. Oh, tell me about your kids. Well, I've got a little boy, I've got a little girl. Well, tell me about the little boy. Well, he's autistic. Now we're getting somewhere, right? You bringing it home. How would that little boy's life change if you were to make an investment that paid you so you could quit your second job? What would that mean to you and your family? And now you've got tiers. And then the next question is, that's awesome. Well, let me show you how this can do that for you. But let me ask you another question. What if it doesn't change? What if things stay exactly the same as they are? How does that feel? That's called the puppy dog. Because I gave him the puppy and he's like feeling it. Oh my God, my kid's life has changed and I took it away. Oh, I need that back. Heart just placed the order. Now all you have to do is explain to the brain why it's good. If you try to talk to the brain before the heart has placed the order, the brain says no. Because the brain's job is to protect the heart or to serve the heart. And if the heart hasn't placed an order, it's like, I don't want to break my heart. But if the heart has placed the order, it's like, I got to satisfy my heart. I got to get it what it wants. That's why we rationalize the things that we want all the time. Your job, when you know how to touch somebody's heart like that, is to make sure in your soul that you know what you're doing is good for them. And you have to completely forget what's in it for you. Your business model should take care of that. If you put a Band-Aid on their wound, it should pay you. You don't have to worry about the price of the Band-Aid. You don't think about what you're going to do with the money. You think 100% about that person sitting across from you.
I often explain to people in our community and users on our software that you are the guide to the hero's story. That your investors, these people that you're going to be raising capital from, that's the hero. They have their own journey, and you're there to help assist them, and you're there to help guide them. And I think too many people make the mistake early on. They make themselves as a hero. They want the credit. They want the fame. They want, hey, look what I've done, rather than passing it on to that person. So what are your thoughts around that? As I share, like, be the guide to the hero, share with us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, so you talked earlier about thinking that when you got in a room full of successful people, they would be scarce. And now you've been around enough successful people, you know successful people are abundant. They think abundantly. They're usually humble. They're curious. They want to learn. They defer. If they think you have value, they'll listen. And a lot of people take advantage of trusting people who have wealth because they tend to be more open. And so I think the first thing to do is really just test yourself and ask yourself, do you have scarcity mentality? Because if you have scarcity mentality, then you fear, oh my God, if I don't make the sale, there won't be another one. I won't eat. I can't make my mortgage payment. Right? When you get into scarcity mentality, it completely changes the dynamic of a conversation. And successful people, they'll pick up on it. And they'll know that you're not authentic. They'll know that you're not sincere. And they'll smell it. It won't be anything. You get all the words right, and the numbers will all line up, and they still won't do business with you.
Because something feels off. There's something tangible, intangible that they can feel, that they can sense.
Yeah. So you just always be working on abundance mentality. Always telling yourself, that it's going to be good. Everything's going to work out. Even when you're going through tough times, there's an answer. There's every problem. There's a lesson. And maybe a reward if you solve it, right? And if even the paradigm of being an entrepreneur, if you wake up going, I want to be rich so I can have a problem-free life. I'm going to start a business so I can have a problem-free life.
There's going to be more problems.
Right? Well, every entrepreneur out there is going, that's never going to happen. Go work at the post office, right? I mean, you'll still have problems, but at least they're not going to be like the kind of problems you got to solve. But if you realize that if you accept the responsibility of being a problem solver, the bigger the problem you solve, the more money you make. And of course, the big type of people listening to the show, it's like, yeah, I've heard that 1,000 times because we're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But when I go out and talk to Main Street people who have day jobs, who are in scarcity mentality, they don't want to hear that they have to change. They don't want to hear that. They do, but they don't want to hear it. So you have to get them to be excited about what they can have. And then when you start coaching them on how they can get there, you begin to move them a little bit. Like, it's never about you. It's always about them. Listen to what they want. And little by little, you move them from scarcity mentality to abundance mentality.
People want change, but they don't want to change.
Right.
And it takes time. It takes effort. I remember seeing this reel. Elon Musk put it out not too long ago. He's like, if people knew what I actually had to go through, like, you wouldn't want this life. Nobody wants the life that I have. And I think what a lot of people on Main Street that aren't involved in business yet, now you're going to change that. That's your whole mission.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Is when you're out working a business, when you're the owner, if you're the CEO, you're not dealing with the day-to-day problems. You've got people in place to do that. When you're brought into a challenge, it's because crap's hitting the fan. And these problems are massive, and that's why you're in the position that you are. And so it's not all about the yachts, the cars, the time on the beach. It's actually quite opposite of that. Like, yes, you can experience and enjoy some of those things, but what people don't realize is the amount of expectations that go into being a business owner. And I've had this conversation recently, and I'd love to get your thoughts. It almost always feels like you're letting someone down as a business owner. And maybe this is some limiting beliefs and stuff that I need to work through in regards to the expectations from partners, from coworkers, from family. And that's one of the things that I think can be challenging for people, especially as they're transitioning into entrepreneurship, is managing all the expectations around them. So, Russ, you've been extremely successful. You've ran multiple businesses, served hundreds and thousands of people.
I've also been highly unsuccessful too, by the way.
How have you successfully navigated and managed expectations from all those that are relying on you?
Yeah, there are salespeople who will overpromise because it's what they have to do to get the yes. I try not to do that. I try to be realistic, and that's a discipline called boundaries. And so I have 8 B's of balance. If you're going to think like a builder, you have to build 8 things in your life. You got to build your brain, put good ideas in your head. You got to build your body and make sure that you have the energy to be busy about your business. You got to build your board. It's the people who are speaking into your life and have permission to call you out on your whatever. You need to build your brand so that you begin to be known, respected, and trusted. You need to build your balance sheet. You need to build your business, right? That's the financial side of it. You also, the last one is you need to build your blessings, right? You need to accept the blessings that you receive, take time to smell and enjoy, right? Life along the way. It's the climb, as Miley Cyrus sings, but also to be a blessing, right? But the other one is boundaries. And boundaries is where you set expectations. I had a situation in corporate sales many, many years ago. And so our company had just been acquired. And that company brought in a sales management team that the reps in the company of the side I was on didn't have any confidence in. And so a buddy of mine ended up having an account, a big account, very important account, a big chunk of his income. They were really, really upset. And he needed management to go in and calm them down. And so he goes, I can't take these guys in here. I said, well, take me. He goes, well, you're not a manager. They don't know that. Mark, would you make me your manager? He said, sure. I said, great, I'm your manager. So we went in and did the call. And so this was before cell phones. This is when we had pagers. This is how long ago this was, okay? And so I sit down in front of the guy, and we go through all the thing, and I identified what all the hot buttons were, and I said, conditional close, if I solve these problems, then will you be happy? He said, yes. Then what is a reasonable amount of time for us to solve these problems? He says, well, I think 30 days. And I said, well, I would love to tell you 30 days, expectations, but then I would be misleading you. And if I misled you for 30 days, then you're 30 days behind. You'd probably make a change, and the next person's probably not going to be able to come in and solve it any faster because I know the problem better than anybody out there. So I'm going to tell you the truth. You want the truth? And he said, yes. I said, 90 days. It's going to take 90 days. And he goes, oh, that's great. Okay, 90 days. We can live with 90 days. See, I set the expectation. The second thing he said was, can I have your, he wanted my, oh, no, we did have a cell phone. We had cell phones and pagers back then.
Was it the brick cell phone?
Yeah, the Motorola flip phone, right? But anyway, so he said, can I have your cell phone, your pager number? And I said, no. And I said, here's why. You don't really want it. He goes, no, I need it. I need to be able to get a hold of you. No, you need to get a hold of somebody who can actually solve your problem quickly. And here's the problem. I've been in here with you for half an hour. I haven't taken any calls. And I have another meeting right after this. It's probably going to be hours before I get back to anybody. If you were to call me, would you, and you have my pager, would your expectation would be that it would take hours to get an answer, or would you want a rapid response? And he goes, well, I'd want a rapid response. I said, then how about I give you the number of people who I train whose job it is to respond to you rapidly? And if they fail to do that, and at the end of 90 days this doesn't work, I'll give you my home number. Well, I never had to do that. So A, we saved the account. B, I didn't have to, I had boundaries, right? And I did the whole thing just by setting the expectation. But I used the sales technique to get him to tell me that he wanted what I wanted him to want.
Yeah.
And it just went down just like that.
And when you were talking about expectations and not needing to have the sale, there's something that Paul and I chat a lot about going into conversations with that with or without you energy. And it's like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to be successful with or without you. Would you like to come along with us for the ride? And it turns into more of an invitation rather than trying to force something onto someone. And I love what you did there in that conversation. And you were asking him questions. You were helping him get to the answer that he needed. You weren't telling him, you were asking him.
Well, that's a core principle in sales.
Right.
Whoever's asking questions is in control.
You were guiding him.
If you watch Donald Trump in a press conference and he gets a hostile press, the first thing he'll ask him, who do you work for? It's called a reversal.
Yeah.
They ask him a question and he reverses them. He's an excellent salesman. You may hate the guy's guts, right? I'm not telling you to be a Donald Trump fan, but I studied Donald Trump way before. I got a chance to interview him, actually. And so, well, it was one question in a press room. Okay,
hey, it counts.
It wasn't like a face-to-face, but I did get my picture taken next to him before he was, I put it up on Facebook, and a bunch of people were like, oh my God, you got your picture taken with the devil. I'm like, hey, you know what? He was just a real estate dude back then. But I've been studying him for a long time because master sales guy, master brander, he was the iconic, best-known real estate guy out there, even though Sam Zell is arguably a much better real estate guy. But Donald Trump, it's just, he's a very rare human being. But you watch him in those press conferences and he will use a reversal to take control away from somebody who's trying to grill him.
Because it's human nature to respond to a question. When somebody asks you a question, it's human nature to provide an answer. And that goes into our education system, right? When the teacher asks you a question, you provide an answer. So a lot of that's just ingrained into us.
Yeah, that's such a great insight there, Dallon. It really is. There's a lot of conditioning that goes on in the school system that is designed to make the populace docile. I was very fortunate. My dad was a refugee, if you will, from the Philippines. He was born in 1940 as the Japanese were occupying, and ultimately, the United States went into World War II, and he left there as a teenager after the peace, but they came to the United States, and he knows firsthand. He saw it firsthand. He knows exactly what real tyranny looks like, and so he has this real love for freedom and loves the United States. And so even though we never talked about it as I was growing up, that I have a recollection, boy, something rubbed off on me. And I just, I never cared for school myself. I had good grades up to a point, but I never saw the relevance. But when it came time to do raise our own kids, my late wife came to me and she goes, I really don't want to send them to school. I said, well, what's the plan? She goes, well, we can homeschool them. Like, what is that? And then we kind of went, and this was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
80s and 90s before it was a thing.
Yeah, it's cool now. It's cool now to homeschool you.
Yeah, well, I mean, based on some of the stuff I've seen, and again, I don't know how much of it, I haven't been in the school board meetings, but I've seen videos. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I just think that, you learn by being around people. You don't send your kid off at 1 year old to learn English in a classroom. Right, you just live with them and they learn it. You teach them manners. You teach them, hygiene. You teach them by doing. It's the same thing with entrepreneurs. You want to learn how to sell? Hang around with great salespeople. You'll pick up the lingo. You'll pick up the speech patterns. You'll get it. You'll see them in action. You'll see their gestures. You'll understand the way they make eye contact, how they get people nodding their head, right, and all that kind of stuff.
And you said this at the start of our interview. The best way to do business or learn business is by doing business. It's about taking that action. And one thing I really appreciate, I shared this at the start of the show, it was your podcast that you were co-hosting that got me to take action. And the action wasn't buying my first real estate deal. That action was buying Rich Dad, Poor Dad and reading that book.
Yep.
Because on your show, everybody and their brother and sister were talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Never heard of this Robert Kiyosaki guy in my life. But when something's mentioned multiple times, you're like, all right, maybe I should look into that. Read that book. Something in my brain shifted.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money. And then because of your show, I started learning about these large apartment conferences that are going on. I went to one of those out in Texas and learned about funds and syndication. And again, something in my brain just clicked.
Yeah.
So for those listening, we've talked about a lot and you're probably overwhelmed with everything that you feel like you need to do. Just take that first step. For me, it was buying that book. Actually, it was turning on the podcast. That was really the first step.
Well, I talked about think like a builder, and the first thing you build is your brain.
Yeah.
Right? How you think and what you believe affects what you do. And so you had to change your thinking, and it changed your actions, and ultimately it changed the results. So reprogramming yourself is that easy. And one of the other things that salespeople or anybody trying to grow struggles with is a good person tends to want to be authentic. And so they say, well, I can't do that because that's not me. Well, that's not the old you, but there's a new you. When I was coming up, we had sales trainers dealing with that mindset. They called it fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't like that because I didn't like anything that sounded like I was being fake. I wanted to be authentic. So I thought to myself, that's a real quandary, right? How do you be authentic when you're in the process of changing into someone you haven't been before? If we all spent our time being 100% authentic, we'd still be in diapers, right? You got to grow. And so you have to be who you're becoming. And role models will help you do that, but also a clear vision. You get to a certain age and you've seen enough, then you can begin to really create a personal vision for who you are, what you stand for, mission, vision, values as a human being. And then your business and your investing become outgrowths of that. And so some of it is going to be, I think, DNA. It's going to be how you're wired. I have another formula I call the purpose formula for how do you figure out like why God made you and what he is supposed to do. And I'm not saying that I have any inside knowledge with God. It's just the way I approach the problem of trying to figure it out and reacting, because sometimes you think you have it and then feedback is no, and what should I do? But again, this goes back to this notion full circle. The power of being an introvert for me is I draw strength from being alone. Mm. And so when I'm alone, I spend time thinking about all these things and I capture those feelings on paper so I can go back and refer to them. And then I can see clearly. I have a series of statements I call my I am statements. I am fit. I am formidable. I am fun. I am friendly. I am diligent. I am authentic. I contribute. I'm tenacious. I'm a good steward, right? I read those. I call it my daily read, programming myself to this vision of who I am becoming so that I can be that today on the road to becoming that. In the beginning, I have to practice it. I have to think about it. Eventually, it becomes second nature. And we all understand that progression in our human development from learning how to try to walk and we fall down, or ride a bike, we fall down, keep trying. Pretty soon we can do it. We're wobbly. After a little while, we can do it pretty easily. And then after a little while, we're riding around with no hands, right? Because it's now we've achieved mastery. But there's no way to get to mastery without going through the lower steps. So I learned that from Tom Hopkins. That was a life-changing paradigm. So don't be afraid to reprogram yourself. But there's a methodology that I have found that really helps.
It's a journey. It's a journey, and it's a process.
Never ends.
It never ends, and it's a process of becoming. And there's always ways. There's always opportunities to become a better version of yourself. So, Russ, we're coming up on time, and man, we could keep going. You even said earlier, I asked you one question, you could go for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm like that. Sorry about that.
No, this is excellent.
There's some good stuff in there.
Oh, there's tons of stuff in here, and really appreciate you taking time. Now, for our listeners that are looking to start raising capital, maybe it's for real estate, maybe it's for a business venture, maybe they met a baby boomer who's looking to exit. What would you say, with your experience in sales, networking, building your brand, if there was one thing that you think somebody should start with in regards to being an effective capital raiser, what would that be?
So there's 5 steps to building a personal brand. And the first one is presentation, is how you show up. Do you look the part? Do you walk the part? Do you talk the part? So get that vision for who you need to be when you see yourself as a successful capital raiser. The practical implications of that could be do a social media audit. What picture are you painting? Right? People are trying to figure you out. They're going to look at you. When somebody you say, "Oh, I'm in this business and I'm successful," blah 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 blah, and they're going to look you up and they're going to find out. That's why I'm pretty open kimono about the fact that I lost everything in 2008, because if people look me up, they're going to find out. So I'm just going to tell them, right? I feel like I'm smarter because I went through that, but I went through it. And a lot of other people did. It's not a get out of jail free card. I learned a lot, and it didn't have to happen. But my point is, be attentive to your presentation. I call that building your brand. Be strategic about it. And then the next level down is association. So if you just focus on how you show up, how you show up in your own imagination, how you show up everywhere you're leaving clues, conversations, social media posts, everything you do everywhere with everybody you interact with. And then you put yourself in rooms full of the right people where you can get those selfies and you could be seen at this conference or with this person, or even if it's just something as simple as taking a picture of yourself. Hey, I just read this book, and it's a book about investing. It's a book about due diligence. It's something, and this is my big takeaway. Now you've shared something of value with the world. You're not bragging, but you're painting a picture of who you are.
And you're not asking for anything.
And you're not asking
You're
for
providing
anything.
for value.
So start with building your brand.
Love it. Love it. Russ, this was great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. If people want to connect more with you or learn more about these events, these coaching programs, mentorships, how can they get connected with you?
I make it super simple, right? So if you want to get on my list and hear about anything I'm doing, and you can always get off if you don't like what I send you, just send an email to follow@russellgray.com, RUSSELLGRAY, follow@russellgray.com.
It's as simple as that. So awesome, folks. Well, there you have it. Russ, thank you so much for your time. And to our listeners, again, if you're looking to raise $100,000 or more from a single investor, this is the show for you. Well, Russ, looking forward to seeing you in Utah next week at Best Ever.
It's going to be great.
And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.